When you're sitting here in the silence, waiting, can you get a felt sense of the energies which are in the room? Inside ourselves, outside of ourselves? What's feeling uncomfortable in the energy? What feels maybe a little bit stressful, bothering? And maybe at the same time where there is a sense of well-being, being well. And not in a way that it's either this or that. And not in a way that there's a competition between the two. So there's this energies of unease, not being easy, kind of perfumes of suffering in a way. Maybe we're touching fields of confusion, insecurity. Vulnerability. Impatience.
I didn't hear it.
Impatience. Hopelessness. Frustration. Annoyance. Resistance, which is a kind of stress. And at the same time, we're sitting here voluntarily in complete freedom.
Yes. Good to mention.
And there is this background, almost like a sneaky secret. Like a sneaky secret inside ourselves of a background feeling of, belonging, curiosity, strength, even maybe a secret joy to be here now. At the same time, it's almost like a deep tissue massage where they begin to touch a very tender muscle and it hurts like hell and it's so good at the same time. Being touched. The pleasure in the pain and the pain in the pleasure, and this deeper sense of permission to be alive. And of the two, coexisting fields of experience. Can we notice which one is more changing, fluctuating? Which one is in movement more, and which one is more continuous and still? Meaning, can we get a sense of what's in the background of our being and what's in the foreground? What's on the surface and what's at the depth?
Is that a question?
It's an inquiry, to feel into it. So this livingness, this life inside of us, is in a way more continuous than all the forms that this life takes in terms of experience. The sense of imbalance, the sense of... Even the threat to survival is an experience which is arising and fading, pulsating, moving, shifting, the threat within this field of the life which is there anyway. In fact, if there wasn't life, we couldn't feel threat as an energy. And can we get a sense of the connection between this background sense of well-being and the feeling of dis-ease or unrest or stress or resistance? Can we get a sense of how this and that are connected? The connection between, the communication between any stress or discomfort we might be feeling in the energy of the room and this inner sense of well-being, of strength, of continuity. I wonder if we can get a sense of the direction of the flow of energy that connects the inner stillness or silence or continuous space of our existence with whatever we are feeling, sensing as uncomfortable in the energy, of which way the flow of energy is going. Where the authority is. Where the power is flowing from. Where the care or love or kindness is flowing from. Where is the peacefulness coming from, which is allowing any experience at all? Can you begin to relax into this universe that we are? Can we notice how natural it is to be that continuous free space, regardless of what is coming and going in experience, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, pleasurable, desirable, or painful and obnoxious? There's a certain naturalness in being laid back in true nature, in the well-being which is, sometimes we forget it's there. So this practice that we're doing each day is about that forgetting. It's trying to reset the compass in a way, in a remembering of who we truly are. Meaning remembering that we're not the conflict, the confrontation. We're not the abuse. We're not the humiliation. We are not the criminal or the abuser. We're not the curse. We're not even the blessing. We're something so much more vast and alive and powerful than all of that. We're so much more magnificent than anything that can appear in our imagination. Even the greatest works of imagination, the greatest works of art or music or sculpture or poetry, they just strive to touch, to represent a little bit of this beauty which we are at source. To take a little bit of the dust of the angels and put it on a canvas. And such is the power of this back door to our own being, that a little bit is enormously transformative and uplifting and awakening. Awakening out of that state of forgetting in which we begin to believe that we are limited, small, defined by conflict, defined by structures of abuse and power, that we are able to be humiliated, that we're able to be degraded, diminished, that it's even possible for us to be rejected. This trance in which we make ourselves so small, 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 small. Even believing that we're able to be irrelevant, purposeless, meaningless. The whole of the universe is alive as us, and we are able to hypnotize ourselves into believing that we have no purpose. And in this we victimize ourselves and we abuse the victim that we have created by victimizing it some more. And with each movement of self-abuse, universal abuse of the miracle that we are, we build up a field of abuse which begins to scream in pain or rage or injustice or despair, screaming murder. Because how can you reduce the energy to something of all the power of the universe to something so illusory and unreal? It's like the very power of truth is screaming out within this limitation. The outrage at the lie of it all is screaming out. It's a bit like the planet, where we put concrete and roads and buildings and hotels and flashing lights and more concrete, and then we knock the concrete down and put concrete on top of that concrete, and then we think we've got a city and there is no nature there anymore. It's as if we can believe that we replaced the planet Earth with a city, humanity. And we make planet Earth and nature ever, but it's there all the time underneath the concrete, totally alive. It's so powerful. We believe that the concrete replaced the life of the planet. The life of the planet is there anyway. And then a volcano explodes in Iceland as the planet farts, releasing some pressure. And the whole of the Western civilization in Europe is grounded for a week. Immobilized, like nothing. And then, because we are so very, very, very hypnotized and stupid, we begin to think that nature is the enemy. Because we got grounded by the volcano. Rather than feeling the incredible sadness at our own arrogance. The arrogance of our smallness. The arrogance of our superiority and limited little superiority. That we humans are so absolute. Not just as living creatures, but as separate from the universe, separate from nature, separate from animals, separate from each other, separate from God. Separate from what we see, separate from our own selves. It's kind of obnoxious if you look at that energy. Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. I'm different, I'm separate, I'm separate. I resist, 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 resist. Resist, why? Because it's not pleasant sometimes? Resist love because the object of our love can die, can get lost, so resist it, don't love. Resist belonging here because we can get rejected, so fuck belonging. Resist peace because there'll be wars. Resist power, our own power, because power gets abused. So the first commandment that Moshe came down from Mount Sinai with, the commandments, which are kind of a little bit like a guideline to humanity. It's not really like what they made of it, but it's wisdoms in a way. In our first course we talked about Tibetan wisdoms, now we'll talk about good old monotheistic wisdom. So the first commandment is, do not take false gods before me. And when we're working with the practice, the playful practice of feeding your demons, in a way we are working with some of the archangel false gods. And to name a few of them, one of them is the god of resistance. So why did we make resistance into a false god? How did we do that? How did we get to the idea that resistance is so powerful that it can resist life? It can resist what's already happened, or already happening. That it can resist true nature, the source of all we are. That it can resist silence. How do you resist silence? It's interesting to look at, isn't it? If you look at like this, a big silence arises among us. How do we resist it? How would we go about resisting silence? Well, in a way, humanity is doing it they're trying very, very hard to resist silence right now. They're making a hell of a lot of noise. But somehow, the more they make noise, the more noisy they become, the louder the silence gets too. So they need to make more noise. The silence keeps disturbing the noise, it doesn't go away. The resistance isn't working. It's just a cover-up. In fact, the noise that we make is an expression of the silence. It's not even separate from the silence. It's born of the silence. It dies into the silence. And every sound is arising out of the silence and returns to the silence. And while the sound is happening, the silence is there anyway. And we have this tremendous living silence at the background to our own being. And no matter how much noise we conjure up to distract from this silence, the silence just gets louder. And if we make that silence the enemy, or if we push the enemy into the silence can begin to feel like it's the enemy. Meaning, if we don't like the sound of pain, we don't like the sound of pain that arises out of the silence, this aspect of pain, of suffering, which is here in creation. We don't like this sound of pain, so we push it into the silence. We silence it. We try to silence it. So we push it down into the silence. We make pleasurable sounds on top to cover it up. So as it's pushed into the silence, the atmosphere of pain fills the silence too. And then we begin to dread the silence and identify the silence with pain. But it's not what silence is. So resistance is quite a nasty one in a way. In its continuous argument with what anyway is here. No, we are the universe in perpetual motion. So let's say that here is the source of all that is alive, here. And out here is the field, somewhere here in our sphere is the field of experience. Feelings, emotions, physical sensations, thoughts, happenings, occurrences. And one of the things that's happening in this universe is resistance. That's resistance. It's just an emotion. It doesn't have any power at all. Of course, what it's saying is, I can resist the whole universe and being alive. But the whole universe and being alive is the whole sphere. It's just a few sparkling lights of feeling impressions basically formed of stress. Which is happening. It's an experience of feeling. The only way that it can blind us to who we are is if we make it into a God. We believe in it. We recruit our belief systems and we narrow our perception according to what it says. And we give this resistance the authority to say yes, no to the universe. Doesn't exist. God doesn't exist. The source of who I am doesn't exist. Nothing there, nothing. We empower it. And we don't have to empower resistance. We don't have to resist resistance either. It's not worth it. It's irrelevant. It's just a set of stress responses. You know, when you go on a plane, at least when I go on a plane, I really don't like flying because there's something incredibly unnatural about going up inside this little box, you know, way up above the ground, especially with the children, and trying to ground yourself. So I go up on the plane and I'm resisting this experience of flying. So I go up on the plane and the plane begins to take off and my whole body goes into resistance. Resist. I'm still going up in the plane. It's still happening. I'm still floating, you know, miles above the planet with some Swedish guy piloting it. The resistance is just a stress response. Many of our demons are just made of stress responses. When we move with, first of all, allowing the demon to take form, we are taking that compact energy inside the stress response, that power which is trapped, the voltage of the stress response, and we're giving it space and form. There's a relaxation possible right there. But then what can come forward is another layer, other layers of resistance. Because resistance is so deeply entwined with our attitude to suffering. And what we forgot was that resistance itself is a suffering. So there is a worse demigod than resistance even. Another false god. And this false god plays out very much in family structures and family stories. And it's the false god of negation. So negation says, negation is like annihilation. So
Annihilation?
annihilation. Okay.
Alliantie. Alliantie.
Negation means ontkenning.
Ja, maar het woord...
Negation, annihilation betekent afmaken. En negation is ontkennen, net doen alsof het er niet is. Het is nooit gebeurd, het bestaat niet. Never happened. Took me some time to understand that word. Never heard of it either.
Afmaken. Dus
So negation is like you can cease something to exist. You can undo existence. You can uncreate something. And not just uncreate it right now, that will just be killing. Negation makes killing look kind of harmless. This is the existential threat. That you could cease to be. That you could be ceased. Negated.
Taken off the whole history, everything. Never existed.
It's not just that you die and you have no future, it also kills your past. And your present and your future. It's an illusion. Primary illusion that you can erase something from existence. Partly because existence itself is a kind of after effect. It comes from a deeper source.
Resistance comes from a deeper source?
Existence.
Existence.
Ex. Like experience, existence. It's not an end point. So this is the core illusion, and that there is a competition between existing and non-existing, being and not being. Of course that plays out into living and dying, and me versus you, angels and demons, what we want, what we don't want. So many of our traumas are based on death. Grief, loss, fear of death, illness. And the fear of death is not the last illusion. Death is not the last illusion, because while our bodies can be killed, we still had a life. We still were born. We still had parents. We still lived. We still felt what we felt. What negation does is say you never were born. You never really had a life. You never are here. Not really. So in the physical body, the fear of death is one thing with all of its survival responses that we work with. When you move into the psyche, the realm of the demons, the astral, the psychological realm, the fear of death becomes the fear of negation, the fear of being existentially annihilated. So now it's so much worse. You know, sometimes people can reject you so badly, psychologically, that you realize that even if you were dead, it wouldn't satisfy them. They would be jumping on your grave and like singing Alleluia, and still they wouldn't be satisfied, because what their hatred is such that they wanted you never to exist in the first place. Killing doesn't hit that spot. They need to... Can you feel the energy of negation?
Yes, it's deeper.
It's sharper and more vicious and more cold-blooded than murder.
Yeah.
And we think, okay, we'll never do that. We would never do that. We don't negate stuff, do we? We don't slice up the world like this and say this can exist and this cannot exist and this... So what's really interesting is that negation, like resistance, this god of negation, this threat, this core illusion, it's also just an energy. In the vast universe of everything, in the great family of things, there's a particular kind of energy called negation. And while we can imagine it grandiosely as being kind of there in the Third Reich, you know, as the Jewish people have to be extinguished from any memory, it's also there in every kitchen of every household. Every time that a child is told that he shouldn't feel what he feels, or that it never happened, or that it's different from what the child experiences it to be. And while most of us as children are quite heroic with that, because we're so close still to the source of all we are, so we don't take it that seriously, when that energy is playing out between our parents, between the male and the female, our mother and our father, it can feel like we are in a very, very, very bad place. Because inside this energy there is such a coldness and cruelty, such a competition, such a war zone, such a Cold War zone as well. It can be there in the freeze-out movement, where our mother stops speaking to our father. She's just not there anymore. She's there and she's giving him his dinner of negated carrots and meat and potatoes to his negated body. But the whole house fills up with this energy. Something is very, very, very wrong. And in a way, like for any god, we begin to dance around it, asking permission to be here, permission to exist, permission to be alive, permission to express, finding all kinds of authorities from the outside that will give us the permission to be, to belong. The permission to go inside, the permission to go outside, the permission to be natural, to relax. In a way, we are recognizing that which has been attacked with the energy of negation, and maybe sometimes we work with negation itself. That which was not allowed to be felt, that which was not allowed to be expressed. That which is in the gaps of our family's face, of our family picture. And what we're doing is very, very, very beautiful. Because first of all, we give it a playful form, a creative form. We invite it to take form. What was negated is now given permission to be here, to express in some way, and we open up our senses to it. And often what we smell, sense, feel in the first instance is the pain of negation, in some form, because it has many forms. The pain of not belonging, the frustration of not being seen. But already with that first movement, we're allowing it into the source of, into our universe, into the field of our awareness. So the moment we do that, we have given ourselves a consolidation in our own true nature. We have become the space in which it can take form. We have become more powerful, more kind, more honest, more fearless, less afraid. And in a way it looks like every session. It's like every encounter between human beings. That's what we do when we meet each other. We let the other be inside our universe, inside our awareness. We open up our sensory, our sensitivity to that other person, and we connect with them. Same thing. So there's belonging in it. The energy of belonging is already flowing through the psyche. And then we ask it, what does it want? And of course we're taking a difficult, stressful, suffering aspect of our experience. So often what it wants is, I want to kill you, or something like that. I hate you. And it can feel like, okay, this isn't very nice. But maybe that voice is always in the back of our heads. You don't belong here. I want you to disappear. I want you to be tiny. Maybe that voice is always, that energy frequency is always resounding somewhere in the background. And now at least it's honestly presenting itself and speaking straight. It's like Donald Trump, you know, at least he says what he's feeling. And then we ask it what it needs. And often there's a little gap of silence there. It takes some time because this creature of ours has been very much focused on what it wants, maybe for decades. So what it needs and it's important to give it time because maybe nobody ever asked it what it needs. And then the next thing, if it comes with, yeah, I still want to kill, I need to kill you. I want to kill you and I need to kill you. Then it's very important to move then to the next stage. How will you feel when you get what you need? This stage must not be skipped. Because it's going to be, and again, it might take some time to come forward. And if under the pressure of the guided meditation, it's okay to imagine what it would feel when it gets what it needs, because there's no time in the guided meditation sometimes for everybody to keep up. But this question needs to be addressed one way or another. What would it feel after it has killed you? And that feeling quality, of course the words are small compared to the richness and precision of experience, but that feeling is the gold. That's the alchemy, that's the essence. That feeling of what it would get after, the feeling it would have after it gets what it needs. What is the feeling it would get after it has killed me? If we don't let it come to that stage, because we're pissed that it wants to kill us, then we maybe need to work with the resistance which is there. Because we're talking about something in our imagination. We're just talking about something in our imagination. It's a bit like when an animal communicates. You know, there are words and stuff, but the words are not the most important thing. It's showing you a feeling. So in a way, you're showing you a feeling of something at the depth of longing which has been forgotten. So a lot of people kill people to try and come to peace, to get free, to find freedom. There's many non-dual qualities there as possibilities, for just in this example. But of course the particular vibration, it's intimate, and the words are not substitutes for the feeling. So this is the feeling we take. So we have talked for years, Bart has talked for years about the need to allow, to accept our feelings and emotions. This is no different from that. Only the allowance now is really given a form. The surrendering of what we're not is given a creative visual form in a link up to the energy. It's the same thing, different clothing, as you've been working with all of these years. It is optimal, and this is something that Titya brought up with her question about pride, and I can feel it's still uneasy. It's optimal to get to a place of a sense, and maybe the words are less important, you can find the well-being in it. So if there is a sense of well-being in the pride, then go with the sense of well-being. So sometimes it's necessary, even in a guided meditation, to ask that extra question. Okay, so pride. So if you are filled with pride, what would that give you? How would you feel then? To treat the pride as a need. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because in the end, we are trying to create that bridge between true nature, who we really are, the source of us all, which isn't separate from every source of everything, and our suffering, our areas of suffering. So what we're looking for is a flow of the quality. And not any old quality like love. We're going for the precise ingredients, the precise soup, the intimate, customized, unus ingredients of that quality. And nobody can do that for you ever. Nobody can give that particular vibration of power, or that particular sense of belonging. It's as individual, more individual than the fingerprint in any moment. But we are going for the qualities in terms of what we feed. So did we get that? In the guided meditation, if you come to something like hatred, ask it to yourselves, even though it's not in the script, ask the next question. If you're working with somebody, you would do this. You would say, and if you are given hatred, what would that give you? And what would that give you? Until you get to a place which is recognizably supporting well-being, true nature, a quality field. It's not that the other way is wrong, but it's less of a direct route. Yeah.
But